Hey, stick around, I'll show you how to do this. Hey there, Greg Lewis, Orange Frog Photography. About 7 months ago, the wifey and I moved to this brand new neighborhood. It's new homes, new neighbors, sparkly, shiny, full of love, hopes, dreams, fantastic. All except in one thing. With new homes comes construction zones. And this is a filthy, nasty, windy, dusty, crappy, horrible place over this side. Not this side. This side's sweet. This side, not so much. Being the optimist that I am, I've decided to make lemons from lemonade. Nope, that's not what I've decided to do. I've decided to make lemonade from lemons and take a picture of my car out in this grungy, kind of cool looking construction area that I just called hopeless and should never go into. But let's see how that works out. Okay, so here we are in the aforementioned construction zone. There's my car. It's not particularly sexy. It's a Mini Cooper. It's not an S. It's just a Mini. It's just a Mini. Oh, I forgot my hat. Now I'm gonna have hat hair all the time out here. Damn. Oh well. Okay, so you might notice I have a flash. And you might reasonably ask yourself, why do you have a flash? It's perfectly light out here. Well, if you look at that scene, it's not much, right? Everything's just sort of flat and murky. And that's where a flash comes in. When you use a flash, you get to work with 2 exposures, not 1. Now, I could take the exposure down so that the sky would come in more blue and be cool, and the rocks might be have a little more dimension, but then the car would be dark as well. So the reason you have a flash is you get the exposure you want on the background, and then you can do your exposure of the subject separately. And for the background, I'll be using my shutter speed, because shutter speed is always what you use to do your ambient light. And then I'll be using my f-stops and the power of the flash to dial in the exposure on my subject, which in this case is a car. Now, that flash is not very strong, it's just a Speedlite. So I may have to use multiple exposures and then combine them on Photoshop. I'm not really sure. Let's be honest, I don't do a lot of car photography. Let's be more honest, I've never done car photography. But the basics of photography still apply, and I'm sure any car photographer would say, oh wait, you didn't blah, 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 and I'm sure there's a lot of that. But let's just try it, because we're having fun, right? We're not professionals, we're just having a good time. Unfortunately, in this case, I don't have a flippy screen, so I have to get really low. That's, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I'm gonna try and set up the flash in kind of a linear fashion, so it looks like one long light coming from the top. Top tip number 2, make sure you have your fiddly bits done on the flash before you extend it all the way on the pole. Basic physics. Having explained high-speed sync, if you're, should we try that in this video? Really quick, if your shutter speed is not set to its sync speed, which in this case is 180, the flash doesn't move as fast as the lens can. I know, completely bizarre, right? So then you start getting where it cuts off the shot a little bit. So with modern technology, we have what's called high-speed sync, and when the flash goes off at a speed that's higher than the speed of my sync speed on my camera, the flash goes and then it gets around that. It's just science. It's pretty cool, actually. Yeah, so one more. Let's try something different. Okay, so the battery on my other camera went out. So now I'm videoing this on the camera, my primary camera that I'm taking the pictures on. So I'm not sure this is turning out the way I want it to, but you know, like I say, we're just having fun, trying out new things, experimenting, because that's mostly what photography and learning how to photography. That's mostly what photography, learning how to be a photographer is about. Experimentation. Like I said, I have no experience photographing cars. If this was a person, this would be a lot easier for me because I know exactly basically what settings on my camera to be. I know how to pose them. I know how to face it in the light. Cars, I don't know. It's a very willing subject. So let's see how it goes. Just sun's starting to go down, so let's, oh damn. Okay, so now we've taken all of the images and thrown them into Lightroom. And the one I've got up here first is just a base exposure I took when I first got out there, and just kind of a composition to get it, to kind of see where I wanted to go. I pulled this up now to show you that it's just not very exciting, right? It's kind of flat and boring, and the composition's not bad. Notice I tried to have the wheel kind of facing towards you and make it kind of coming out at you, so I went low and wide, and that's fine. But as far as the sky and the background and everything, it's all just sort of mushy and melds in together. That's not the kind of photography we like. So if you move on down here, you can see that there's a lot of dark exposures in here. I couldn't really see my histogram on my camera, and I didn't feel like getting down in the dirt. And so I just had a sort of eyeballing exposure. But you can tell as I was getting the exposure down to what I wanted in the sky, so you can move that up a little bit, I still wasn't getting what I wanted. I couldn't get a dark sky and get the car exposed the way I wanted with this one little teeny Speedlite, which is all I had with me. A little later in the evening, as I waited and I wanted to really get golden hour anyway, golden hour is great. It's right when the sun's setting. You probably heard of it. And it just makes everything more interesting and jazz hands. The front of the car is exposed basically the way I want, and the sky is still it's a little underexposed, but I can work with that since I took raw images in Photoshop. So here you can see I'm getting different exposures, right, by moving the flash around, because I had one flash that wouldn't do the job, so I had to move it around. Does that make sense? So I can see kind of the pictures I want, and I want to go ahead and take them all into Photoshop. And the way you do that is you select all the ones you want. And also over here, notice I got a little clever with putting the flash inside the car, and also maybe under the wheels, just kind of add a little pop. So anyway, what you need to do is when you find the images you want to take in Photoshop, because Lightroom is great for some things, but it won't do layer masking. That's what we have to do now. So you go ahead and right click on all the images you want, and you say edit in Photoshop, and say open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, now you can see all the layers are here, and there's an additional step you have to take, and I've already started to do this here. You have to go ahead and add a layer mask. Now this isn't a class on Photoshop and layers and layer masks, and it can get a little complicated, but one great resource for Photoshop is Phlearn, phlearn.com, P-H-L-E-A-R-N. I've learned a lot about Photoshop from this guy. He's kind of goofy, but he really does well in showing you how to use Photoshop. So anyway, what I've done here is in each case, I've added a mask, and you just go down here. Let's take it off here so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so this is just a layer that you bring into Photoshop. You go down here and say add layer mask, and it just adds it. And now we want to invert that so it hides everything in the layer, right? And that's what I'm going to do here for the rest of these. Unfortunately, there's no way to multiply select all of these and do them at once. Not a way I've figured out. So hey, if you guys know how to do that, let me know, because this drives me nuts having to do these one at a time. So let's do these real quick. Okay, now that I have everything in a layer and I have a layer mask over each thing, basically all of these layers are hidden right now, except for the last layer. And you can see if I look so you can just see the last layer, there's nothing there, right? And if I disable this mask, which is covering up that layer above it, then you can see that one layer above it, right? So what I want to do is one at a time, going up the hill, I want to expose the things in the layers that I want. Now I'm looking really quick. I don't really think I want anything in these layers. So I'm going to go and just delete these 4, right? I'll just delete these. Okay, so now you can see, if you look at the thumbnail, you can see kind of what you're going to want to keep in each layer. And what you do is you turn on the brush by hitting B, and you make sure that the colors for the brush are black and white for this to work. What you're basically doing is no longer a brush, it's sort of an eraser for the mask layer, right? So you're erasing the black, let's say you're actually exposing the part of this layer that you want to show. Like, see how I want to see that light? Well, now if I hit the brush, and I can just click on up, and if it's additive and subtractive, so it's going the wrong way, hit X, and now I can make it subtractive. Oh, also you have to make sure you're selecting not the image, but the mask. That gets important. So now I'm selected the mask, and I know I want to just expose this little bit in here where the Let's get rid of this layer too. I don't want it. Okay. So now I can see that I want that part of the, where I lift the inside of the car, and I'm going to go ahead and brush that in, right? See how I can just brush that right in? And just the part that I want, right? I just want that part. So, and you can see now it's taken up the black away from, it's exposing, the white part is where I've exposed that layer. So let's just move up one at a time. This next layer, I can see that I kind of want to expose that rear tire where I had, excuse me. Cough syrup. Let's just move up the next layer and say, okay, I know I want to expose that. You might want to make the brush a little smaller. And now we get that light coming out of the back tire. That looks kind of cool. By the way, this is not like an eraser in Photoshop. So you can hit X and remove things that you might not like, right? So it's non-destructive. You can just add and delete the things you want on each layer. That's why it's so freaking cool. Okay, so we just move along. Now, I'm not going to make you watch all of this, I don't think. I think that's the tire, right? Yeah, so let's just get the tire in there. I want the light that I took from that tire. But maybe I don't want where it's so, where it's making the ground so dark, where we got a shadow. And I don't like that part where it's really blowing out. I just kind of want to show that light, right? So it's artistry. You're the artist, you create it. And the next one, see now I got the side of the car well lit up here. So this is a part that I know I'm going to keep and make the brush a little larger. And hitting the wrong, you gotta not do that. I do this all the time. Make sure you're not selecting the image, make sure you're selecting the layer. So now I'm just gonna brush that in, right? The light part, except I gotta do it. Okay. See, now I'm brushing in where the car is well lit. Now, can you see how this is starting to come together? Yeah, pretty cool, right? All right, now you've got the composition basically the way you wanna see it. And you want to start working on it as a whole. And the way you can do that into Photoshop is go ahead and make a new layer just by hitting this little layer thing down here. Now what you want to do is you want to combine all those layers, and you might be thinking, well, I'll just merge them, but you don't want to merge them. You want to make them all go up as a new image. I don't know how to explain it. Just do this. You have to have a new layer, and you go to Image, and you say Apply Image. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the compilation of all those and stick it up in a new layer, right? I guess that's the easiest way to explain it. And it'll show you the layers, all that you're merging. Make sure it's on normal, and then just hit OK. And there it is. So now I've got the compilation of all these layers below. So I won't mess these up. If I have to go back, I can fix them. Okay, now I can start looking at this as a whole. And the best way for me to work, by the way, on general atmosphere on an image is to go back into the filter. If you go to Camera Raw in Photoshop, it's essentially just like what you're doing in fact, it's exactly like what you're doing in Lightroom. So now I have the ability to adjust exposure. I'm gonna pump that up a little bit, right? Where I like, right about there, where we like that sky. I think I'll make the sky make it just a little bit more blue. And then we can say, pump up the contrast a little bit, and always check your whites. Just have a little bit of white and a little bit of black. And then this is what's really going to probably change a lot is the texture, right? The texture really makes it gritty. And then clarity, you're just going to clarity the crap out of this thing, right? Okay, now it's starting to look like something special. We didn't really take a lot of time. We could have taken more time to, well, we can still do that, I guess. See how we sort the exposures aren't exactly even everywhere, right? One way we can kind of work with that is pump up the exposure just of the car. And the way you can do that is hit the brush tool, say new, and take up the exposure a tick. Where's exposure? There it is. And you make the brush larger by hitting the bracket keys and just bracket in a little more exposure. That's way too much. But by doing that, you're sort of evening out where everything was getting too, right? That's way too much, obviously, but I'm just doing it so I can see what I'm doing. Once you push this up, you can pull it back down, right? Now I can pull it back down a little bit to taste. So right about there. Okay, so now I love this sky that's going on. I like the exposure of the ground around here pretty much. I think I'll make another brush and move up the exposure just to the wheels. All right, little things I'm still seeing that I want to take care of in here. I like to usually pump up the sharpness. And I also like to, I think I got the exposure on the car a little high. So now you can see, you click this and go, okay, I can check the exposure. Bring it down just a little bit. Maybe I won't get crazy with it. You want it, I mean, this obviously is sort of hyper realistic, but you still want it to look high, you know, kind of realistic. You don't want it to look crazy. So usually when you're doing anything Photoshop, subtlety is the way to go, especially with humans and skin. You never want, but something like this, you can be a little more aggressive and play around with it more. Another thing we can do is we can put a gradient on the top and maybe play a little bit with the color of that sky. So you can go crazy with that. Again, you want to, you know, it's up to you. If you want to go crazy and make it a purple sky, that's cool. All right, so I'm gonna make it about right there. Again, it's all a judgment call. It's all up to you. All right, so now this is looking pretty close to what I want. I do have a little cleanup to do. I did notice that, let's get out of the raw filter. There's a couple things I should have taken care of physically. I did not. I can see right here I've got a little bit of smudgies on the car. That's very easy to take care of with the very magical spot healing brush. It's magic. Boom. Look at that. Boom. Look at that. It's freaking amazing. I love this stuff. And you can go crazy with this. It's always a good idea to kind of walk away from stuff you're doing and come back. I don't want to do that right now because I just want to get this done. But another thing you can do is kind of look at it from a distance, make it smaller, and just kind of walk back. So so when I pull away, I just think the car is way overexposed. There's some little things I see that, you know, that crane looks like I've overdone it with the vignette, with the texture, and it's kind of put a haze around it. And I hate it when people do that. That's the classic sign of an overbaked photo. I don't want it to be overbaked. I want it to pop. I want it to be unusual. I want it to be interesting, but I don't like overbaked. So I'm going to come back in, maybe pull back on the filter. Now we're back on the filter. I think I'd like to just bring the whole exposure down a little bit. Okay, another thing we haven't talked about. I think the image is pretty much, no, there's another thing I want to look at. Let's look at the headlights. I kind of want to come in on those a little bit. So let's do a new brush. And let's do temperature. I want those headlights to look a little more yellow. Well, not yellow necessarily, but brighter. Okay, so let's say maybe, you see if you want them to be blue. Oh, that's the wrong. If you want them to be blue, you could move in like that. I want them to be just brighter. Look like the headlights are on. And then still, I have to work out this one last issue. This little stripe right here is driving me crazy. I really wish I would have done it in before I did the composite. So I'm going to go from the base layer and grab a piece of that. Just lasso a piece of the base layer. This looks pretty crude. It is, but a new layer. Now I'm going to try and just see if I can get the opacity of this one layer up enough, right? Adjustments, we're going to say exposure because that's what we did before is we increased the exposure. So maybe we can get the exposure just this layer to, oh, look at that. That isn't terrible. I know a lot of Photoshop pundits would not have done that way, but I think it actually kind of worked. All right. All right, I feel a lot better about that. So I think I pretty much got this to where I want it. I think I'll keep that crane back there. I don't think it's too distracting. I kind of like the way it worked out. So let's crop it. Keep some actually, I don't think I want to mess too much with the crop. Maybe bring it in a little bit. Rule of thirds would say I need to put something of interest in one of these, in one of the third quadrants, but I think I'm just going to keep this center where the headlight's sort of the center of the, coming out at you. And I think I'll keep that wide, actually. I don't think I want to crop this. Maybe a little bit. All right, maybe I should save this. Okay, so that's about it. Yeah! Yeah, I'm wrapping things up. I'll be right up. Okay, so that's about it. If you have any questions or comments, be they snarky or kind, please leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe and also hit the little bell so every time I make a new video, you're notified. Thanks so much and stay focused.